Before you listen, if you enjoy the stories and want to hear more, then please consider subscribing. Most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please take this time to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story and be the first to hear. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you. You see, online dating is a bit like a lottery, isn't it? Sometimes you strike gold, sometimes you strike out, and sometimes you land smack dab in the middle of a freaky tale that keeps you up at night. This is my story with Victoria, a bewitching beauty from Tinder, or at least, that's what I thought she was. Her profile was one of those that you can't help but notice. A stunning brunette with bright green eyes that sparkled with a hint of mischief. Her bio was witty, packed with references from my favorite books, TV shows, and even an obscure indie band that I adore. Our chat was full of flirtatious banter and shared interests. It felt like I hit the jackpot, or at least that's what I thought. We decided to meet up at a hip local coffee shop downtown. I remember being a bit nervous, fumbling with my tie, checking my breath, the usual pre-date jitters. As I entered, I immediately scanned the room, looking for the brunette beauty I was expecting. But she wasn't there. Instead, there was a woman sitting in a corner who seemed out of place. Her eyes kept darting nervously around the room. She caught sight of me and gave me a little wave. With a sinking feeling, I realized that this woman was Victoria, or at least the real Victoria. She was nothing like the woman in the pictures. She was significantly older, her hair was lighter, and she lacked the sparkle in her eyes that had initially drawn me in. I was taken aback, thrown off, even a little angry, but I decided to go through with the date mostly out of a morbid sense of curiosity. Throughout our coffee date, I couldn't help but feel a sense of betrayal. The woman sitting across from me wasn't the witty, adventurous person I thought I had been connecting with. She seemed nervous, her hands shaking slightly as she held her coffee mug. Our conversation was stilted, her replies shallow and absent of the charm and wit that I had come to associate with her. As the date continued into the night, my intrigue turned to discomfort. Victoria was an adept conversationalist, there was no doubt about that. But as we delved deeper into the conversation, her interests and opinions took a disturbing turn. She spoke at length about her beliefs, many of which were deeply unsettling. She had an almost dismissive attitude towards the concept of honesty, claiming it to be an overrated virtue. She explained, without a hint of guilt or remorse, how she often told white lies to manipulate situations to her favor. Then she delved into her fascination with the lives of others, confessing to an almost voyeuristic interest in personal dramas. She seemed to take a certain amount of pleasure in the knowledge that she wasn't alone in her struggles and miseries. This lack of empathy was startling, and it painted a chilling picture of the person in front of me. Then came the revelation that left me speechless. She shared her disdain for people who took online dating seriously, branding them as desperate and naive. As she discussed this, there was a look in her eyes, a kind of cold amusement that left me deeply uncomfortable. It was as if the deception, the manipulation, was just a game to her, a game she took perverse pleasure in. It was clear that the person I had been chatting with wasn't the same one sitting across from me. The shared interests, the witty banter, the apparent connection, it all felt like a well-constructed lie. I ended the date as quickly as I could, making up some excuse about an urgent errand. Once home, I sent her a message confronting her about the deception. She tried to play it off as filters and lighting, but the damage was done. I was hurt, confused, and I felt betrayed. This was no simple misunderstanding. This was a deliberate and calculated act of deception. I reported her to Tinder and blocked her immediately. In the following days, I had to grapple with the reality of my situation. I had been catfished. It was like someone had pulled the rug from under my feet. I'd allowed myself to be vulnerable, to open up to someone, only to find out it was all based on a lie. The experience left me wary and a little disillusioned. It served as a harsh reminder of the potential dangers lurking behind the glamorous facade of online dating. I became more cautious, more skeptical. Every new profile at every match was met with a little suspicion. What a story I've got to share. Sit tight. This isn't your average once-upon-a-time tale. No, this is a tale of my very own foray into the bizarre, my chilling rendezvous with a bloke named Simon from Tinder. The story starts innocently enough. I mean, who hasn't experienced the butterflies of setting up a first date with someone you met online? The thrill, the excitement, and maybe just a tiny smidge of anxiety. but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to endure. When I first saw Simon's profile, I was intrigued. He was handsome in a nerdy boy-next-door kind of way. His bio was sprinkled with charm and a touch of wit. I found it refreshing, like a crisp autumn breeze after a sweltering summer. After a few days of seamless and engaging conversations, we decided to meet. Nothing fancy, just a low-key dinner at a cozy Italian bistro downtown. The day had finally arrived, our first meeting. I spent the better part of my afternoon going through the usual pre-date jitters. What should I wear? Should I be fashionably late? Or better be on time? Questions, excitement, and a good dose of adrenaline filled me as I prepared. When I walked into the cozy bistro, Simon was already there. He was at a corner table, absorbed in a book, the warm light from the rustic chandelier illuminating his face, adding a bit of mystery to his boy-next-door charm. I still remember what he was wearing, a neat blue button-down paired with classic black jeans, and those glasses that added an intellectual touch to his overall boyish charm. Our table was perfect, tucked away from the main dining area. It felt intimate, but not overly so. A pair of mellow yellow candles flickered in the middle, their light dancing in his eyes as he looked up and greeted me with a smile that put any pre-date anxiety to rest. The air was filled with the soft murmur of conversations, the clinking of dishes, and the tantalizing aroma of food, creating a perfectly comforting symphony for our rendezvous. He was articulate, funny, and had a seemingly never-ending supply of fascinating stories. The whole evening went smoothly, like a dream where everything just falls perfectly into place. But then things took a turn. Simon began to pop up in places I didn't expect him to be. It started at my favorite cafe, where I saw him accidentally as I was enjoying my locked-end novel. He played it off as a coincidence, and I thought nothing of it at the time. But then there were other coincidences. The gym, the supermarket, the park where I walked my dog. Simon was there. Always there. His texts grew increasingly more frequent and intrusive. Random check-ins throughout the day, just to see what I was up to. Late-night messages telling me how much he missed me, how he couldn't wait to see me again. Each message, each encounter, cast a darker shadow over the seemingly charming guy I thought I'd met. Soon, my gut instinct was screaming that something was off. Each unexpected encounter, each message, dripped with an eerie familiarity that he seemed to have with my routines, my movements. It felt like he was not just a part of my life, but in some twisted way he was living it. And then one day I received a package. Inside was a bracelet I had admired in a store window a few weeks back. A note accompanied it. I'd noticed you admiring this. Hope it brings a smile to your face. Love, Simon. The chill that ran down my spine was colder than any winter wind. The store was out of my city, a place I visited on a weekend trip alone. How did he know? Then came the ultimate shock. One evening, I came home to find my dog wearing a new collar. Attached to it was a note. Thought he could use a new one. It was Simon's handwriting. The realization hit me like a thunderbolt. He had been inside my house. The fear became a constant companion, making a hole in the pit of my stomach. The Simon from the bistro, the charming, warm, funny Simon was gone, replaced by this lurking, omnipresent shadow. The steps that followed are a blur of police reports, restraining orders, sleepless nights, and endless worry. My safe haven, my home, my routines. Everything felt stained with his eerie presence, but I was not going to let fear dictate my life. The healing process was slow, with long days filled with unease, but the fear eventually began to recede. I leaned on my friends and family for support. I moved to a new apartment, got a new phone number, changed gyms, anything to get out of the ever-watchful gaze of Simon. In the end, what was supposed to be a simple dinner date turned into a chilling lesson. A lesson in trust, in listening to your gut instinct, in never taking your personal safety for granted. The experience changed me, made me more cautious, more aware. But it also made me stronger, more resilient. And as for Simon, the nerdy boy next door from Tinder, I don't know where he is or what he's doing. But I know he's not a part of my life anymore. I made sure of that. So my advice to you is simple. Listen to your instincts. They're usually right. And remember, no matter how charming the profile or how captivating the conversation, you never truly know who's on the other side of that screen. You know how they say that some dates are just unforgettable? Well, my date with this one menacing yet beautiful girl took that to a whole new level. So there I was swiping away on Tinder when this one girl, let's call her Jess, profile caught my eye. She had this carefree aura about her, a wild mane of sun-kissed curls, and a grin that practically screamed mischief. She was a digital nomad, always on the move, with a fondness for retro video games and spaghetti carbonara. She was absolutely gorgeous. Our chat was light and flirty, filled with inside jokes and friendly banter. We decided to meet up for a classic dinner and a movie date, followed by a bit of gaming at the local arcade. The day of the date finally arrived. I remember being a bundle of nerves, constantly checking my reflection in the mirror, ensuring my hair was on point, and my outfit looked casual yet cool. I picked Jess up in my truck, and we headed off to the cinema. We watched this quirky indie film she had been raving about. There were laughs, shared popcorn, and that sweet sense of anticipation of the evening yet to come. We then made our way to a trendy Italian restaurant downtown. It was one of those fancy places with an exposed brick interior and mood lighting. We ordered the house special carbonara and a bottle of red wine. There were toasts, tales of our travels, shared dreams, and plenty of laughter. It felt like we had known each other for years rather than just a few hours. Finally, it was time to hit the arcade, a retro-themed joint packed with all sorts of games from the 80s and 90s. We battled it out at Pac-Man, tried our luck at the claw machine, and ended up on the high score list of Space Invaders. I remember how her eyes lit up with each win, and the way she laughed heartily when she lost. It felt like the perfect end to a great date. I dropped Jess off. She lived in an apartment complex, so I dropped her off nearby and we said our goodbyes, promising to meet again soon. On the drive home, I was on cloud 9, replaying the evening in my head. It was, in many ways, one of the best dates I'd been on. Or so I thought. The next day, my blissful bubble was burst when I realized that my credit card was missing. After a frantic search, I checked my account online, hoping for the best but preparing for the worst. And the worst it was. There were charges on my account for items I'd never purchased, along with orders from high-end stores in the city. A wave of cold dread washed over me as I connected the dots. The timeline of the unauthorized payments coincided with my date with Jess. The locations were all places we had been near. It was a gut-punch realization. Could it have been her? The friendly, fun-loving woman I'd spent the evening with. My mind was a whirlwind of questions and disbelief. I immediately contacted my bank to report the fraudulent charges and block my card. Then, I tried to reach out to Jess to confront her, or at least try to understand why it happened. But all my calls went unanswered. I then tried to find her on Tinder, only to realize that her profile was gone. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. It made sense as to why she told me to drop her off away from her place. Over the next few days, the truth of the situation started to sink in. I had been scammed. My dream date had turned into a nightmare. I felt betrayed, shocked, and a tad embarrassed. The charming, seemingly genuine woman I had spent a fun-filled evening with had likely stolen my credit card and used it to fund a shopping spree. In retrospect, I suppose there were signs. The way she insisted on holding my jacket at the arcade, the way she was overly interested in my lifestyle and my spending habits. At the time, it seemed like friendly curiosity, but hindsight, as they say, is 20/20. Thanks for listening in. If you like these stories and want to hear more, then please subscribe and like and support this new channel. We have more stories for you to listen to.